So, I wake up wanting to fight every day. So that's not a new thing for me. But for those of you that don't know me, it's really good to meet you. I'm Rae Le Roux. I ran last year for governor of California. I have not yet decided what I'm going to do specifically in the political realm this year. I'm supporting some candidates who are interested in having my help. If I'm not running, I'll be funding candidates. Political giving was something that was really new to me last year as a part of generosity, but I really received the generosity of people's time and energy, and just experienced generosity in so many new ways. So after the campaign, I had this kind of frustration that a lot of the people that I knew personally didn't know the things about money that I was taught when I was little. And I felt like the money habits that I developed when I was little were part of what prepared me to run for office. And so I'm going to just share you some of the brilliance of what my parents shared with us today. And I hope that this will activate in you ways that you're thinking about your money, your generosity, your earning, et cetera, this year. And I'm not here to teach you the right way to do it. I'm here to teach you from my own experience. So I'm going to share a presentation that I put together called Money Camp. And I've been traveling around the country and sharing this at different churches and in different small groups. And so if at the end of the conversation, there's a group that you think would benefit from hearing what I have to say about Money Camp, I'd love to, get connected with you about that. So just a little bit about me. For those of you that don't know some of my background, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I have a Southern name, but a Northern accent. I'm the oldest of 4 children, and my parents said that from the day I was born, they've been trying to keep up with me. I love to learn. I got a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Virginia and an MBA from Columbia Business School. So I do have a background in business, but a lot of what I learned about business, I learned from my parents and from my work experiences, and from my passion about government, actually. So I believe in a lot of really unique expressions of creativity through business, and I'm super, super pro business. And I actually get really excited when businesses solve, excuse me, problems that we have in society. I do own a business now. It's a successful business. I bought it in 2012. And because I think that most of us on the call are believers, I'll just share a little bit of that story with you. I was in a business with an owner that I didn't particularly like, and I planned to quit from the business. And on the morning of my meeting that I'd set up with him to quit the business, the Holy Spirit told me to buy the business from him. And so I had bought large businesses as part of private equity deals, multi-billion dollars, but I'd never bought a business like this. So I made an offer to him. He was surprised by the offer, and it turned into a purchase contract. It took about 8 months to buy the business from him. So I actually closed on that contract 6 weeks before my first son was born. He's now 9 years old. My family and I live on 181 working ranch in Northern California. I'm in my work clothes, so right after the call today, I'll be headed out to the ranch to do some pruning. If any of you ever need some work experience on a ranch, you're welcome to come up. We always have work to do. People always worry about when a good time to come to the ranch is. We're ranching all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week and 12 months out of the year. So if you want to come and learn something from the ranch experience, we're happy to have you. I actually really understand why a lot of the early founding fathers wanted to have people be landowners so that they could vote. It's now not a requirement, of course, in the United States, but the stewardship of your land and the understanding of the work that goes into it is a really compelling part of the life that we've built for ourselves here. My husband and I also own and manage 27 rental properties, both in Pennsylvania and in California. We rent them both short-term and long-term. And so, I have this very interesting background. I'm a businesswoman with business training. I worked for some very large businesses, but I also own a small business. We own a ranch, and we are landlords. So if you have questions kind of about any of those aspects, I'm happy to share about it. One thing that makes me unusual, these are not by any means the only reasons why I'm unusual, but my parents trained me on money for 30 years. And there were really three stages of money. They spent for 10 years on each of them. The first stage was on spending. They taught us to spend wisely, purposefully, in their early training with me, because I was the first, they taught me to spend money on the right things. As my sisters, my brother kind of showed up, they taught us to spend money on the things that we valued, which was a difference. The second stage was on saving. So ages 16 through 25, saving. This is something that we don't see a lot in government today, but this is a standard principle that you should save for times of famine or challenging periods. And then stage 3 is investing. In ages 26 to 35 and then beyond, we really started to talk about investing. And in many ways, I've kind of surpassed my parents in terms of the types of things that I invest in and the ways that I invest. They're ahead of me in terms of how long they've been investing. And so we continue to learn from one another now. I really learned about money more from life than from school. So I often will discourage people from trying to learn in school the things that they need to learn from life. And my background is that I have these wildly innovative spurts where I'll go and build a company or work for a startup amidst very kind of normal situations, right? Getting an Ivy League MBA, working for a blue shoe firm, Bain and Company, right? And then, in between those, I shave my head and travel the world. So what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit of my story. I'm happy to share numbers if you're curious about them. But, I really love to create a shame-free environment. I think that money is one of the things like religion and like politics that we should be able to openly discuss in a free society. And there was a saying in my parents' generation that you shouldn't discuss money, religion, or politics. And what that was really talking about was that things of substance we should ignore. And I disagree with that entirely. I think we should talk about all the above: money, religion, and politics. So one of the things that I'll talk about, for example, today, and I put this on the slide, is that I didn't begin generous. Generosity is something that I'm becoming. It's something that I'm learning, something that God is teaching me. So why am I doing these teachings? Number one, I love to problem solve. Number two, I love creativity. I love creative problem solving, and I love it when the Holy Spirit comes in and gives us ideas that we never had before. And I hope that you'll encounter some of those as I'm talking today. I love people, and I love unlocking purpose and freedom. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the money journey overall, and then I'm going to talk about each of the key areas. So in the money stages, there are really 3 stages: spending, saving, and investing. Giving is something that goes the whole way through. And you know how I realized that? I had a conversation when I was 21 years old with a friend of mine who said, "Oh, I'll give when I have more money to give away." And I said, I think that that's not how it works. I think that when you give when you have little, you're developing the muscle and the trust to give in the future. And when I was campaigning last year, God and I had a conversation about whether or not I should take a Sabbath. I said, I have very little time. I need to win this election. And so I'm going to work, through the Sabbath. And God said, a Sabbath is a prophetic act that there's always enough time. And when he said that, it made me think about the tithe and about giving. And giving away while we're earning, and even after we've ended our earning period, is a prophetic act that there's always enough money. And it's building that prophetic muscle, that trust in God as the one who is the provider of all things. So I started giving, when I was younger. I started tithing even when I was a child, thing that my parents gave me, but I really have more recently come to understand the purpose of that. So I think it's helpful for us to self-identify where we are. I'm currently in the investing stage, but I had to graduate from the other stages, and some people need to go back to the different stages. So all of my children are in stage 1. My husband is in between stage 1 and stage 2. He did not begin his money education as early as I did, and I'm in stage 3. And so we have, different stages even in our own household. You graduate from stage 1 when you have extra every month for a year. So when you have money left over, when you only use debt for houses and cars, and when you're out of credit card debt. So if you have credit card debt, you're in the spending category. If you don't ever have any money to save, you're in the spending category. And our focus, if I was working with you over a longer period of time, would be on really like evaluating your spending habits, why you spend, who you're comparing yourself to, what's driving you to spend, what you're going to spend, and saving on purpose. And then we move into the second stage. So saving, you graduate when you own your first home. You're maximizing your retirement contributions. So you know that you're saving as much every year as you possibly can toward retirement, and you have some extra savings to deploy. And one just point of encouragement is that you can operate in stage 2 for your whole life. You can have more than enough to retire and to leave an inheritance. And in fact, this is kind of the very traditional way that many people will both retire and leave an inheritance. They'll own their home, and they'll have enough money to save through in retirement. Investing, I believe, is where God wants to take us. Investing, you never graduate from. So, right, I joke, you graduate when your legacy for your children's children is complete, when we've built the kind of world that we want our grandchildren to live in. I'm not there yet, and I hope that you guys aren't either. When everyone in your city who can work has a job. Right? So you finish investing. Investing is part of providing capital to businesses to grow, to develop products, services, and work. And if everyone in your city who can work has a job, then you're done investing. If not, then there are more businesses that need to be created. Maybe you need to create them, or maybe you need to be the investor in those. And all of the needs of your community are fully funded. I right now would view the scope of my community as the state of California. For many of us, that's not what God calls us to. He calls us to a local community, to a town or a city or a county. But your community is fully funded, when you are done with your investing stage. And this is one of the reasons why people who operate in business as investors say that they'll never be done. They'll never be retired. They'll never be complete, because there's always a legacy to leave, more work to be created, and more value to be added, and then more community projects to continue to fund. So just out of curiosity, if you guys would either unmute or type into the chat bar which of the 3 stages you're in, the spending, the saving, or the investing stage. That will give me a good sense of who we've got on the call. Okay, you guys, this is awesome. So we've got people in different stages, but hopefully this kind of gives you some good insight as we're talking through it. Just one thing that I want to say, I did not realize that the purpose of your savings throughout your life in your retirement accounts was not to live on until about 10 years ago. And this is something that has been really a revelation as I've thought about investing from a government's perspective. What kind of things should a government invest in, and how should government investments work? But really, an investment, when you think about it, should be the kind that returns both appreciation of capital. It should be better value over time, and also it should have an income stream that comes from it. And so for those of you that kind of are still thinking about the retirement stage, part of your goal is to save enough that you never have to touch your principal. And so for many people, that would be somewhere in the, let's say, $2 to $3 million range, which would give you around $100,000 to $150,000 at about 5% return, where you'd never have to touch your principal. Like I said earlier, giving starts at the beginning and never ends. And for me, it includes tithing. It includes planned giving, so regular support to different ministries and organizations. And it also includes spontaneous giving. And really, there's more even beyond this kind of giving that I'm doing. There's really just something that changes, which is when I do each kind of giving. And I'll explain a little bit of that. Okay. The last question is, would you say that you began generous, that you had a generous mentality, that you grew up in a generous family, it was just natural for you to be generous your whole life, or you are becoming generous? I'm becoming generous. So I'd love to share just a little bit about that as well, just based on where people are. So again, would you say you began generous or are becoming generous? It's one thing that the Lord told me a couple of years ago that he wanted to teach me to be generous. And I thought I was generous. But I was actually fearful in my generosity. I would give kind of saying that I trusted in the Lord, but it wasn't joyful and it wasn't with an expectation that God would do something really amazing. And it also wasn't with freedom. I would give with expectation, like with requirement, hey, I'm going to give this to you, but you better do a good job with it. And so God's been freeing me up from a lot of that and making me, really generous where he has me just excited to give, on the edge of my seat, waiting to give, and also looking for ways to build on what I have so that I can continue to become more generous. But let's just start with spending. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly because, people said this wasn't one of the areas where that was kind of a key issue. But, really spending equations, simple enough that a kiddo can understand it. How much you make minus how much you spend equals how much you have left to save and invest. And your goal is to have that always be positive. So that was what my parents taught me when they taught us with cash when we were younger, right? How much did you make? Do you have money to spend? If you don't have money to spend, you don't spend something. And, what if you don't, right? So there are really three kinds of debt that you can have: good debt, bad debt, and ugly debt. And I love teaching this to teenagers. I've had a really great experience in my classes having teenagers come, and I'm like, okay, here's good debt, right? Good debt is house debt, fine art debt, and sometimes education debt, right? The value is that what you buy with that debt is going to increase in value over time. Bad debt is car debt or retail debt, right? Why? Because the value of what you buy goes down after you buy it. Doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't have it, just means you have to be careful about having too much of that. And then ugly debt is credit card debt, right? Balance transfers and personal loans. Why? Because, you're basically just buying something now and paying more for it later. So instead of something that's increasing in value, you're actually paying more for it over time. So, avoiding debt mistakes. What are some of the keys that I'm working on teaching my kids now? Some of the things that my parents taught us. Number one was just wait, right? So take 10 years to graduate from any spending training before taking on debt. Know the amount that you'll pay off each month and the date that you'll pay it off. And limit debt, keeping it simple, and adding at most one new type of debt each year. So if you finance a car 1 year, you're going to wait to get a house another year. Then you're going to wait another year to get a new credit card. And that's just kind of one of the things that we're teaching our kids so that they don't pile on debt that they're not quite ready to handle. One thing that I've loved learning about in this past season has been the year of Jubilee. My husband will turn 50 this year. So I was curious about the year of Jubilee, and I went and I studied it. And I discovered something that I didn't ever know. And you may know this, but I didn't. The year of Jubilee was the ending date of debts, not the year that debts were canceled, but the year that your debts were fulfilled. It was like whatever the end date of the mortgage of your house is, it was that year. And so people would give debts to end in the year of Jubilee. And because of that, it was a year of completion. And I love that the idea that like there's a season of completion of your debt. And then from there, you move into a new season with your finances. But it's not because somebody forgave your debt. It's just because that was the year that you planned to complete it. I work on easy budgeting with a lot of people. A lot of people have way too many spending categories and things going on in their budget. And so I have them separate their bank accounts into three different kinds of accounts. One is one account for everything that's predictable. So everything that comes out the same amount every month, we go into that account. So you would add up your mortgage and your rent, $2,500, any insurances that you have, maybe another $300, your phone, your budget billing, utilities, where you have your utilities on the same amount every month, any gym, a car payment, any allowance that goes to your kids, right? Schooling, kind of anything that's a regular expense, and you put it into that account in a lump sum, and all of those expenses come out of that account. Then you have planned savings for different categories of savings, and then one other account that is for everything else, which includes your groceries, your gas. I've just met a lot of people who have said like budgeting for specific line items for them doesn't really work. So this is a helpful way to reorient a budget and make it a lot simpler. Many of you are trying to save more or save more in a strategic way. Even if you're good at spending and don't overspend, this can be a great way to just get a better handle on what you're actually spending. What I love to do, by the way, with everybody is when we go through this predictable account, we say, okay, we're spending all this money on purpose. Are we sure that we want to spend it? Do we want to spend Netflix? Okay, great. Do we want to spend, this membership that you have, this, thing that you kind of pay for regularly? And if not, let's put money in there that you want to spend on purpose. When I'm working with people on the spending category, the first thing I always focus on is how can you make more? Increasing how much you make is always my first choice. And if any of you are curious about starting businesses in this new year in 2022, I love starting services businesses. They have very low risk, no upfront cost. And you do often sell either some time or some kind of value, but I just love the fact that you can create something out of nothing very, very simply, and you can often make much more per hour using services. I have an example budget that I put together that has kind of those different categories, right? Income areas, expense areas, then predictable savings and other. And what I love about this is that it kind of just makes sure that all the money gets spent in the key areas before it goes to the extra spending at the end. Finally, I have some spending declarations. If you want to borrow these, you can take them into this year. One of the things that my parents always said over me that was such a powerful declaration was, you're good at making money. And it's been true for me my whole life, but I believe that declarations make a difference for us. So you're good at making money. And if you're not sure how to make money, then just profess over yourself, I'm good at making money, and kind of watch some of the ideas that come to you. I have more than enough, so I don't spend to gain worth. I already have more than enough. I value X, but I don't value it enough to go into debt for it. And then I'm a creative problem solver. So those are some of my spending declarations. Finally, if any of you have people in your life that you want to teach about these things, I've got young children, so I'm teaching them constantly. We do an activity called Payday in our family when we pay our children based on their age. We pay them a salary, so we don't pay them by activity that they do because we want them to train themselves for salaried type roles. But we do dock them pay if they demonstrate that they're not completing their tasks, and we give them bonuses if they're doing well. We use that as character training also. A ledger, my son, who is almost 10 years old, when he's 10, will begin to keep a ledger of the money that he makes and what he does with it. That was a topic that my parents did with us, and that 5-year period from 10 to 15 was really great for that for us. We in our family always talk about ways that we can have free fun. We try to be cautious about making sure that our kids think that the things that are fun need to cost money. And so free fun is a big topic in our family. One of the things my parents spoke over us was, if you can have fun for free, you will be successful and happy no matter what your income. And then finally, make a business. So we're working right now on creating businesses with our kids. We've created some different ones over the years. We have them sell things to people, ask them for money, tell them what's in something, what they value. So make a business with a child or with somebody who's in your family can be really amazing. So for saving, right, this is really the financial freedom equation. It's making sure that you have housing paid for. And if you don't have housing paid for, then that's something that you have to include in your budget. You have money to spend. And ideally, your spending money will be something around 5% of your savings every year, but not that you're going to spend that your savings will make you a 5% return and that you'll be able to spend that. Your savings will be there for a rainy day, for big investments that you want to make, or for, hopefully passing on as an inheritance to somebody else. And these are really, this is how simple it is, right? You know, this retirement. So my husband and I, in our spending money, have a significant amount of money from our 27 rental properties. And so our savings are probably lower than other people that would have the same net worth that we do. And our housing, interestingly, is paid for every month because we live on a property that has 4 rental homes on it. So our 181 acre ranch is paid for every month, not out of our pocket, but because of the renters that are on our property. So we retired about 7 years ago. We developed financial freedom about 7 years ago because we had enough money to spend. We had our housing completely taken care of, and we had enough savings for a rainy day. So now we're just working on building up those categories and spending a lot of time on investing. So saving level 1 is, right, buying a house. Making sure that you're purchasing a house and putting money into your long savings. That's usually in the US into retirement vehicles like IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, etc. And then keeping some money in short savings. And the goal is that you pay off your house over somewhere between 15 and 30 years, that your long savings gives you a minimum of about $6,000 a year per adult. Sorry, $6,000 a month per adult for about 30 years. And so you have that number multiplied out. And then short savings is about $10,000 plus for a new car, new house, and big expenses. Just so that you guys all know the Roth IRA, the IRA, and the 401k or the 403b. My goals are basically first to fund anything that employer matches. So if you're employed with an organization, whatever their 401k or any match that they give you, that's free money. I always encourage people to put that money in first. Second, if you're able to, if you make less than $200,000 a year as a couple, you can fund a Roth IRA, which is about $6,000 a year. That's pre-tax money, and you can buy things in there that you hope will really appreciate. And then third, you want to fund your maximum through an employer. So if you're able to do, like I'm able to do about $52,000 through the company that I own, if you're able to put more away through retirement, that can be really beneficial. And when saving, this is one of the areas where I really uncovered a lot of fear when I started moving into this and wanted to mature in this. I was saving because I believed the following 3 things were not true. And so I had to begin to declare them over myself. This began my journey into government because I began to just declare my future is secure. My future is secure, not just because I'm subject to other people developing it for me, but because I'm going to be a part of creating my future. I will leave an inheritance, and I will navigate what I need to figure out how to leave an inheritance, not just practically, but also spiritually and in wisdom. I want my children to know what to do with their inheritance, and I want them to build on it. And then third, I'm consistent. So I am faithful with my saving. I'm good at saving for the long term. I trust in the short and the long term, and I have a plan for my future. Some teaching topics. So, we work with people kind of all over the country now on developing some separate savings accounts. A lot of people find it helpful to have a different savings account for the long and the short savings that they're doing. So, Charlotte, in your example, when you say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a second house, we would say, awesome, you can take that money from anywhere, but if you're still working and if you have money that you want to put away towards something, put it into a separate account that's on purpose. And you can do that for really anything that you're saving for. Also, if any of you have kids, your children are eligible to get Roth accounts. I didn't start mine until I was in my 20s, but I could have actually started it when I was about 15 years old. And so anytime that they're filing income with the government, they can start a Roth, and they can put their total amount of income they can put into the Roth. And then rental houses. So we, with our kids, it's kind of funny, we'll drive around neighborhoods if we're visiting someone, and I teach at a lot of different universities. So we'll be in, Indiana and Texas and different places. And our children now understand that rental houses are savings accounts that other people pay money into. And we love thinking like that with them. And so we'll drive through a neighborhood, and instead of saying, Mom, look at that house, isn't that beautiful? They'll say, Mom, we should buy that house. And I'll say, great, well, let me run the numbers for you. And you can tell me whether you think this is going to be a good investment. So we play rental house instead of kind of, thinking in a different way. So, so one of the things that really was fascinating to me is that investing is not for your future. Saving is for your future, and you can invest the money that you save, but usually your goal is not to think like this, not to build beyond yourself. Usually you're trying to amass enough to provide for your future needs. Investing is when you have enough for yourself. And you're working on building beyond yourself, and you're planning to utilize your capital to be seed money in other people's businesses, to develop gifts of hospitality. My husband and I, we have 27 houses. That's more than we need. We could have stopped at 2 or 3, and we would have had our needs provided for in our old age. But 27 houses, we want to develop a hospitality gift and to improve neighborhoods. And so, when you invest for yourself, you build an empire that is just easy to tear down. When you build beyond yourself, when you invest in other people, other people's ideas, in a community, and more, that's really where I believe that God prepares us in the parable of the talents to take dominion and really through service over cities and other areas. And really, there are 3 main ways that you can invest. You can put your money into real estate, you can put your money into securities, which include things like commodities, and you can put your money directly into companies. And I just go into a little bit more detail of these, right? So real estate, each one is a savings account that the other renters pay into. It's really the optimal use of debt. If you follow, we have 3 rules. You could have any 3 rules of your own, but ours are that we would want to live in that home, that we believe we can sell it for more than we bought it for, and that we can rent it for more than all of the expenses plus $500. So all of our homes have fallen into that rule, and there have been many others that we could have purchased that did not satisfy those rules. Securities include index funds, stocks, bonds, target retirement funds. Really, the goal for securities is to pick something that you believe you'll never sell. If you are day trading, then that's really more of a job than an actual thought about an investment. An investment is to give someone money and to expect for them to multiply it for you. And then for companies, right, you can build them, you can buy them like I did, you can invest directly into them, you can do angel investing, so you can give debt or you can give equity into companies. And this is a whole area on its own, but a really exciting way to begin thinking about how to multiply your money into impact that you believe has purpose, that you value. Again, our 3 rules of real estate are that the rents, number 1, we can collect rent on property for, our number is $500 more than our mortgage, taxes, and insurance. That means that we have both a profit, even if it's not a significant profit on paper because of the tax advantages of real estate, it's still a big profit. For owning, it means that we would be happy to live in the unit, and for selling, we can add value to sell it for more than it's worth. Our rules for securities are that they should be simple, long-term, and things that we understand. So easy is good, right? When we buy it, we hold it forever. We try not to worry too much about the price. We just hope to buy companies that we believe are adding value with our money. And so if they become more expensive later, that's good, because they added value with the money that we already put in. And things that we understand. And then our rules for buying companies, we buy them 100%. We understand that we're buying a job. I've looked at due diligence to purchase other businesses, and that's always my expectation. I'm going to work for 1 to 2 years in this business. Is this the kind of business that I want to run for 1 to 2 years? For late stage, we plan to give debt to the company and be happy with today's returns. For early stage, we expect to lose our money 9 out of 10 times. Our investing declarations really begin with a principle of having more than enough, right? I have more than enough to share. I love learning. I will invest in a business simply to learn about something new, not just to make a return in it. And especially in those categories where you expect to make money 1 out of 10 times, right? The purpose is different than if you're trying to make a return every time. More responsibility is coming and I'm preparing for it. So I want to invest today because I expect to have more responsibility tomorrow. And I'm a benefit to my community. Some teaching topics, one of the things that I really love to do is go to investing conventions. One of the ones I love is the Berkshire Hathaway Investing Convention in Omaha. And so, I've learned from different families there, things that they do. There's one family from Australia that purchases a single stock for their children every year, and they track the stock throughout the year, and they track the stock price, and they also track the value of the company. So they track the intrinsic value, the income and the revenue, and then they track what it's trading for, and they look at the difference between those two. Shadow week, this is a topic that I've talked about with a lot of teenagers and young professionals, which is, and I think we should do it even if we're 40 and 50 and 60 years old. But you want to go learn about something, go find somebody who's doing it and ask them if you can bring them coffee and hang out with them for a week, and just tell them you're going to be super easy. You don't need to get paid. You just want to go and learn. Investing is about learning. It's about learning throughout life. And so Shadow Week, I think, is really powerful. Curious, before we move into Q&A time, is there anything so far that I've taught that is either activating in you a new question or is something that you haven't heard before? That's one of the things that gets me excited, is that I watch people that begin at every stage of life. And you can be 20 and do all the things that I'm talking about, but be afraid and not gain the returns that God has for you. So I just pray for an increase over you. Just encourage you guys, keep the conversation open, right? This can and should be something that we should talk about openly in our families. And I keep asking my parents, tell me everything about the things that you haven't told me yet, because I keep feeling like there's things that they know that I want to keep hearing from them. So what kind of school did I go to for K to 12? I went to public school. I went to government-run school in Pennsylvania. So I went to a private school that was not a Christian school. It was just like a private school for 2 years in Tennessee. But then when my family moved to Pennsylvania, from grade 3 until grade 12, I was in public school. And just to remind you guys, I didn't learn this in school, not in my economics degree and not in my MBA. A lot of these things I think are things that that I've learned from people, and from the Lord poking on areas where I'm afraid, and giving me new freedom. We just were at the beach with some friends, and they were like, we see that you guys are doing something unique with your money. Can you tell us more about what you're doing? And I was talking a little bit about buying businesses, and they were just like immediately activated, and they started looking. They were like, well, how do you buy a business? I said, I don't know. Let's go figure it out for your area. And so we went and started looking at businesses in their area. And now they're looking at, buying a business, or maybe buying a franchise, or maybe starting something. It's been really neat for them to kind of like work through that process. They just dove right into it. And so I love that. I have flown to different churches and different places. If you guys have a group of people that would want to gather to ask questions or to learn, I invite people age 13 and up to come to the sessions. And so I'd absolutely love to do that. I can also do it by Zoom.